Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right when it comes to your health, but you're still struggling with fatigue or chronic issues? What if the key to finally feeling your best isn't just about diet and exercise, but about getting to the root of what's really happening inside your body? In today's episode, I am sitting down with D.R.E.S., a pioneer in functional diagnostic nutrition, to uncover why more practitioners are turning to diagnostic nutrition to help their patients overcome chronic conditions. We'll dive into his D.R.E.S.S, D.R.E.S. for Health Success protocol, a powerful approach to balancing the body naturally, and explore how gut health plays a critical role in our well-being. Plus, we'll discuss how food sensitivity testing can be a game changer in healing your body and how to address the root causes of what Reed calls metabolic chaos. If you're ready to take control of your health in a whole new way, this is an episode you don't want to miss, so let's dive in. Did you know that our struggle with weight doesn't start with the food on your plate or get fixed in the gym? 80% of our weight struggle is mental. That's right. The key to unlocking long-term weight release and management begins in your mind. Hi there, I'm Rita Black. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, weight loss expert, best-selling author, and the creator of the Shift Weight Mastery process. And not only have I helped thousands of people over the past 20 years achieve long-term weight mastery, I am also a former weight struggler, carb addict, and binge eater. And after 2 decades of failed diets and fad weight loss programs, I lost 40 pounds with the help of hypnosis. Not only did I release all that weight, I have kept it off for 25 years. Enter the Thin Thinking podcast, where you too will learn how to remove the mental roadblocks that keep you struggling. I'll give you the thin thinking tools, skills, and insights to help you develop the mindset you need, not only to achieve your ideal weight, but to stay there long term and live your best life. Sound good? Let's get started. Hello, and come on in and have a seat. And if you have noticed, if you look around, I'm not here. Sorry, I'm away. I am in northern Spain this week, but you can still sit down. You can still, the someone can sit in my chair. I'm in Spain visiting my daughter, Valencia. And then, and I'm going to be also in Barcelona, and Costa Brava. I'm taking some time. I have not really toured Spain or ever. I've been in Spain when I was 21 years old, but that was the last time. And really, I'll be honest with you, I don't remember much because I had dysentery, because I got into a crazy mess in Morocco. My friend and I decided, we're going to go to Morocco. And what a couple of dumb, I call myself, just like, okay, I'm not going to use the word dumb, but just naive young ladies we were, going to this country that is a beautiful country. But we were ill prepared, shall we say, and we ended up being chased out of the Casbah. That's a long story, and that is another episode. So anyway, I did get dysentery, and I spent my time in Barcelona in the bathroom. And I have some lovely photos of the tiles on that bathroom floor, because that's all I knew. So when I think of Barcelona, I think of these very beautiful tiles. So in this little rundown pension, or I think, is that Italian? Well, anyway, rundown place that we were saying, some kind of hostel. But anyway, so now I'm going back, and I hope to heck I do not get anything, that I'm fully able to enjoy Barcelona, and we're going to be hiking and biking and all that fun stuff. And I'm going to be doing some recording in Barcelona and all these places on how to travel healthfully. So I will compile that all into an episode upon my return. So for now, I just want to introduce you to my wonderful guest. Reed and I sat down before I left for Spain and had the most intriguing interview. And I think you're going to learn a lot from him. So please hit subscribe, though, while you're at it to this podcast, because you don't want to miss what I've got in store coming up. And now let me introduce you to the amazing Reed Davis, who you are going to love. Reed Davis is a board certified holistic health practitioner and certified nutritional therapist, and is an expert in functional lab testing and holistic lifestyle medicine. He's the founder of Functional Diagnostic Nutrition and the FDN certification course with over 4,000 graduates in 50 countries. Reed served as the health director at a wellness center in Southern California for over 10 years, and with over 10,000 clients, is known as one of the most experienced clinicians in his field. Reed serves on the advisory board of the American Natural Wellness Coaches Board and the American Association of Natural Wellness Coaches. He lives in the US, and when not teaching the FDN certification course and helping his graduates build their private practices, he is usually found gardening or riding motorcycles. Wow. So let's welcome Reed. Well, hello, Reed, and welcome to the Thin Thinking podcast. It's an honor to have you here today.
Thank you. The pleasure and honor is mine, Rita.
We were talking a little bit before we turned on record, but please tell our audience about you and how you help people. It's a very fascinating field you're in.
Thank you. These days, I'm just teaching a system I developed that started back in a wellness center in the last century. I was in environmental law and conservation. I was really saving the whole planet, air, birds, water, trees, bees. And I started to wonder about people, including myself. And if you see enough dead fish and dead birds, you start to wonder. I was healthy, but I didn't want anything to sneak up on me. And I happened to be taking my high school athlete's son into this wellness center. He was I wanted him to do well in sports, and he did. But I got a new career out of that because I listened to the doctors there. I'd never really been to one except for sports injuries. And they taught me just so much. And then hired me really to do marketing, basically. I was a good businessman, but I fell in love with practicing, and I started interviewing every person that came in the door, all the patients, and they were all seeking something alternative because they'd seen 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 different practitioners and weren't better yet. And so to summarize that, I was just floored. Number one, the people, I thought it was a ripoff. I didn't know the system just wasn't designed for them. The medical system wasn't designed for them. Uh, it was designed just to treat symptoms and disease and not really make them better, I learned. But they coming in and having, what do you mean you've seen 8 people and you're not better? I just thought it was a ripoff. And when you're trained in law, you're an advocate. It's an advocacy type profession. And so I just started advocating for people. And one day I was out riding my motorcycle thinking, boy, life sucks for them and what a ripoff. And I said, I'm going to be the last person they need to see to get better. And I had a lot to learn, Rita, as you can imagine, but nothing to unlearn, and I just went to work trying to be that last, figure out what's really wrong. What's really wrong? Get the diagnosis. Back then, everybody had fibromyalgia, and I laugh just because, well, I guess it just seems funny that that was the disease of the day that everybody had. And women who were in their, say, 45 to 65 and even older, were challenged with overweight and fatigue and foggy thinking and low libido and can't build muscle and don't feel like working out and all these things. And
Right.
so I learned to run lab work. I'll
Hmm.
just summarize, that's what I learned. I learned to run lab work and I ended up doing more in 10 years. Took me 10 years, thousands of labs on thousands of people, alternative labs. Like I
Right.
bet you, some of your listeners were told that your blood work's normal, nothing's wrong with you.
Right.
Oh no, something's wrong. They know something. So I had to run the other lab work that would figure out what I call healing opportunities. So 10
Okay.
years of that, and finally I just started teaching that system because of my own observations that I had learned
Mm.
and put together.
And what did you learn? Like what, when, of thousands and thousands of labs and probably lots of different symptoms, lots of different challenges. What did you find one sort of circular root cause or like a few major root causes that trickled down to these symptoms or problems that people were having?
Well, that's a great perspective, first of all, because there are always multiple root cause. I gave up that term root cause. I mean, I see people using it. I see people using it, and even I used it 20 years ago. But really, most of these conditions you find people in it, taking age, 40 to 70, even just women. They've worked, raised kids, and they're kind of had some stress, and now they're finding themselves met with challenges, just health problems. And there isn't a lot of places to go. I had to be the last guy. So I started running these labs. And to answer your question, yes, I recognize patterns, but I had to learn to test their hormones and their immune system and their digestive abilities and their detoxification pathways, energy production, nervous system balance. So I worked my butt off for 10 years because I couldn't just become a hormone specialist. Well, then
Right.
you help people with hormones issues, but what about the other ones? What if you worked on that and it didn't really get them very far? So I had to learn everything that I could with the labs that are available and the data that we can collect, in other words. Um, and the patterns I recognized were very reliable, very repeatable. And so I just learned it. Well, just check all this. So back to your comment about the root cause. There's never one. There's multiple causal factors, and they're pretty far upstream sometimes.
Hmm.
Like you said, they trickle down. That's a great term because that's what happens. But as they're trickling down, they're crashing into each other in ways
Right.
that so these causal factors have an effect on each other, and hardly anyone ever even mentions that. They'll say, well, it's stress, or, I had an accident, or, I drank some chemicals. There's just so many different types of stress out there. But yeah, the fact that it interplays with each other in ways that can't be singly measured, and that's coming from someone who teaches a course in lab work. What I'm saying is, I just call it metabolic chaos. Metabolic
Hmm.
chaos. That's
Mm.
that's what your quote unquote diagnosis would be if I was given one. And so how do you sort it out? You got to do all the lab work. You got to look for multiple causal factors. Can't guess. You can't. And this is the trouble. I bet some of our listeners are coming up against it. It's like you got someone who specializes in thyroid, or someone who specializes in irritable bowel, or someone and none of them are really connecting the dots. So that's what I learned in the office. 10 years, thousands of labs, thousands of is the patterns, and it's very reliable when you look at all of it together. Very reliable.
So if now you're teaching, but in your day as a practitioner, if somebody came to you with brain fog or sleep issues, or a single thing like, oh, I have brain fog, I just have brain fog. So you would test for everything, and the brain fog is usually coming not just from one like, oh, well, this is your problem. Go do this and you'll be fine. There's usually multiple factors contributing to the brain fog. Would you say that
There's
that?
usually multiple factors, yeah. And so two things. One is that you'd have to get really lucky. And that's what it turns down to. Flip the coin, what luck? You're just gonna listen to the symptoms and what does it sound like and get good at guess. Well, it sounds like thyroid. You run a thyroid test and then what, pat yourself on the back because you found a thyroid problem. We couldn't stop there. I couldn't stop there. I had to say, well, why is the thyroid malfunctioning?
Mhm.
Because the remedy was never, this is the two things. One is, yeah, I can run those same tests and go, oh, look, thyroid. But thyroid's part of an axis of hormonal pathways and things that includes the gonads, like what about the sex hormones? What about the anabolic catabolic hormones? What about like the adrenals and the other things? So you need a bigger picture than just sounds like thyroid. Because even if you get thyroid medication and you feel a little bit better, maybe you didn't solve what caused the thyroid issue. So
Right,
my saying for that is the symptoms aren't the problem. They're the result of the problem.
right.
They're appearing because there's a dysfunction, like you said, upstream. It's great, great analogy. Almost like if you take the symptoms, they're the top of the iceberg, what you see above the water. And you've probably seen this analogy. Underneath the surface, that iceberg is huge, and it can have hormone issues contributing, immune system issues contributing, digestive issues. You're not really well nourished. Eating
Mhm.
the best food, you could actually be uh, deficient because you're not breaking down and absorbing. So all of these things that are going on in the iceberg, that's your body. The symptoms, and by the way, even those, let's say, thyroid test results aren't the problem. You don't just want to move the numbers on the paper with some agent, drugs or whatever. You want to find out what's the causal factors, and it's not that hard to sort out when you know which steps to take. But it took me a long time to figure. Now I can teach you in 10 months what it took me 10 years to learn. Because I
Wow.
teach a course in it, but it's there's always a lot going on, and so I hope I answered your question about the root cause. There's never one, so you need to look at a lot of data and then connect the dots. And then, as I was saying, the other thing was, what do you tell people to do?
Yeah, that was my next question. Is like, so
Oh,
okay,
no
when
kidding.
once they take the tests, how do they get how do they peel away the layers of the onion to get to that place where they can cause all those downstream symptoms to dissipate and get to the primary?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not like that, huh? It's not
No,
it's not like working backwards. It's maybe there's some
the
other.
first of all, I'll say, and this is a nod to the physicians and medical practitioners out there who are very good at relieving symptoms. So if you did have thyroid symptoms, and there's a very traditionally reliable cluster, oh, it sounds like thyroid. You run, oh, yeah, low thyroid. So that's not a bad thing to relieve, but it doesn't fix anything permanently. And you'll
Mhm.
just go, well, then you have another complaint.
Yeah.
Sounds like low testosterone. Oh, here, take some of that. So there's ways to monitor the lab reports and sort of treat the paper, if you know what I'm saying. So what we've always tried to do is find out what are all the underlying influences, especially around stress. I'm
Mhm.
sure everyone listening's heard of stress, but
Yeah.
do you really get into all the different types of stressors, which are not just mental, emotional, your job, your kids, your finances, your relationships. That's all really important. You go a step above that, the psycho spiritual, no purpose in life, feeling, like you have no reason for being around. All that's very stressful, and it affects the body in a certain way.
Yeah.
It gets you out of balance. Call it catabolic, anabolic, and there's measurements, so I can measure that. But
Wow.
the body reacts the same with a catabolic anabolic imbalance to physical stress. Like I
Hmm.
have a very well used body from sports and motorcycle, and so I have aches and pains that just I've messed stuff up. I did jujitsu and karate and Muay Thai kickboxing and things, and so so I cause stuff that I still have pain. The body responds the same, whether it's that mental, emotional, psychospiritual stress, physical aches and pains from injury or trauma, and it responds the same. And it responds the same, the body, to chemical stress. And we're under so much chemical stress, the number of chemicals in the environment. Remember, I started in environmental law, so I know how the toxic soup we're marinating in. And I'm not a uh, drama person. I don't overemphasize it, but it's pretty rough. I direct people all the time to Environmental Working Group or EWG.org. You want to know which foods are the most toxic and other things in your environment, which personal care products and household cleaning products. Some of them are very toxic. It's just allowed in, at least in this country, you're allowed to poison people. So you take all this stress, types of stress, and the body responding appropriately to it. Actually, it's just trying to save you. So your body just trying to survive. But the breakdown is very predictable. Here goes the catabolic, anabolic, the cortisol and DHEA measurement. The next thing that goes your sex hormones, your testosterone, your DHEA, your estrogen and progesterone get totally wrecked. The cycles get wrecked. The symptoms are obvious, periods and all the things. Early menopause is even 25 years ago was rampant. It's worse today. The infertility and things like that. So you got the stress hormones, the sex hormones. The next domino to fall would be your immune system. So you start to get sicker more often and you start to
Hmm.
have maldigestion because most of your immune system's in the gut. Pretty common
Mm.
knowledge today. It wasn't back then. We had to figure this stuff out. But you end up with a dysbiosis and not enough good bacteria, not breaking down and absorbing food properly. Then you get the medical term is bigger, badder bugs. You get worse overgrowth and infestation, yeast and parasites and bacteria, biofilms and things. And it just downward spirals from there. Again, I don't want to belabor this too much, but there's tests for all of that. So that's why I look at all of the data we can get. Are you detoxifying properly? And on
Right.
and on. So I run labs. Then I think this is interesting because we started talking about what do you do about it? Well, you don't just treat the paper. You don't say, "Oh, here, look at this number, and this will bring that
Yeah.
up or bring that down or whatever you're trying to do." What would correct it? And so I learned this kind of the hard way, if you want, in the office. I was the only non-physician, so the doctors there would laugh at me and say, "We get to diagnose and treat. In other words, we can just run one lab, get the paper, little, you know, prescription pad out and off they go. Um, hope for the best. And but would laugh and say, you have to figure out what's really wrong with them and then teach them to fix it because you can't write a prescription. That turned out to be the biggest blessing in the world, but before we turned on the recording, we talked about COVID for a sec. How it actually was a blessing in a way for a lot of people. They had to reevaluate and change directions or, reset the game, so to speak. And that's what I had to do. It wasn't, I couldn't diagnose and treat anything and didn't want to. And the people coming in didn't want another diagnosis. Oh God, just don't give me another diagnosis. And so instead, I would say, well, let's take a look at what's going on, what got you here. People, the ones that would take responsibility, Yes, I overwork, I overdrink. Whether it's coffee or alcohol, one gets you going and one slows you down. And then just what you're willing to put up with in life and the exposure and just so it was all lifestyle based. So I would say, hey, these doctors you're coming in to see for whether it was chiropractic or acupuncture or shots or whatever, that's not what's going to fix you. It's what you
Mhm.
go home and do. It's how you go home and live. The diet, the rest, the exercise, the stress reduction, the supplementation. And that D.R.E.S.S became our now well phrased, well coined DRESS for health success formula, D.R.E.S.S, diet, rest, exercise. Now, pick an area. I've done some podcasts and lots of interviews and webinars and speeches and things on any one of those things.
Right.
You spend an hour or two or three on diet. How do you find the right one? What about rest? You know, you and I both go to bed early, get up early, but and then the exercise, the stress reduction is probably the biggest thing, the most variety in there. Hard to sort out sometimes, and then supplements, which I know a few things about. So that DRESS is the formula.
Well, that's fascinating. I wonder, given our time frame, what you think. I would love to hear about your advice, like for if somebody was just going to try to take a few first steps on minimizing stress or sleeping better, or um, what would be the number one supplement that you would, and detoxification. I'm interested in that. Like, how can we prevent? I mean, obviously, we're like you said, we're immersed in toxins, but what are some safeguards that we can take that would at least eliminate some of the ones that are going to cause the most damage? Or can
Well,
we?
they're going to be things that you've heard before in that area. Toxicity is a problem, and detoxifying is a natural occurrence in your body if it's working properly and if it's not too congested and there's a lot of moving parts in there. Um, but you can't empty a bathtub if the water's still running. So
Mhm.
eliminating some of the toxins could be really critical. And taking a look at, as I mentioned, environmentalworkinggroup.org, EWG.org, which they have what's called the Dirty Dozen foods that are known to be full of poison. If you're not buying organic, and even then you got some issues, but the Dirty Dozen, and then they have
Mhm.
the Clean 15. So you could eliminate, in other words, we got to turn the faucet up. You can't empty the bathtub. We could work on your detoxification pathways, of course, liver, kidneys, the lymph system, the lungs, the skin is a detoxifier, the colon. So there's lots of ways to work on your detoxification systems, but turning off the inflow is good. That's just stress. That's a stress reduction. Eat less crap. Just
What
it's
would be, I mean, I know you can't tell us all 12, but what would be the most fascinating ones that our audience would go like, oh my God, I can't believe
yeah.
that's got
Well,
that
well,
in there.
yeah. I'm always surprised when like strawberries makes the top of the list because you'd think. And here's the other funny thing: it changes year to year. They reassess because of how
Mm,
our produce is uh, grown and distributed, and lots of things
right.
enter into it. So every year they come up with a new dirty dozen. But you'll see things on there that you don't want to be on there that you love. Like the difference between organic blueberries and non-organic blueberries. Non-organic blueberries are up in the top five, and
Wow.
they're my favorite fruit because I grew up in Canada picking wild blueberries and other things. So like that. So it changes, and you'd be really surprised what's on that list. If you buy organic, this is a way to reduce chemical load, and it doesn't have a lot of extra nutrition. These organic foods that requires really good soils management and minerals and vitamins and all the things that have to be in the soil. But at least you can cut out eating the toxicity, which are affecting your nervous system and everything else. They'll make you crazy. They're half the reason I think the kids have ADD and ADHD. So they're eating, red dye number 3, which actually was just taken off the market. It's a known neurotoxin and these types of things. So, in 25 years, I've learned a few things about that, and it's hard to remember all the facts and figures, but we do have resources, like I mentioned. Matter of fact, I could give your listeners my Dress for Health Success guidebook, D.R.E.S.S, just a way to generally start to clean up your lifestyle in easy, bite-sized pieces. Which is
That'd be
another
great.
answer to your question would be, what can people do? You got to pay attention. You got to become self-aware. You got to make it important. You got to get up in the morning with a mission and really want to make the improvements and realize like what you do is so important. Your therapy to get people to realize that the pain of changing is not as bad as the pain of staying the same. And maybe I could say that the other way around. They think they're in pain. They don't like their lives. They're miserable even, but it's better than changing. How does that work? I don't, so what you do will help them change the game. I call it changing the game, you
Yeah.
know, and yeah, you gotta end the game you're in. You're playing this dangerous game of Russian roulette with the foods and all the bad negative input from whatever it is, TV and everything like that. Um,
Reed, what are 3 of the top clean foods? Where I'm curious, and I'm sure our listeners are too. Like, I mean, you don't have to tell us the top 3, but what's on the
yeah,
clean food list that you might be, well, that would be interesting.
homegrown, anything you grow in your backyard is going to be clean because you're not going to put that glyphosate and all the other garbage on.
Right, right.
So it's more sourcing than
Okay,
the actual. They have a clean 15, and yeah, I haven't looked at it in a while, and it's got some yummy stuff on it, guaranteed. Go there and look. Hopefully, you can find something like. So what we do instead of just we test. So I have a food
mhm,
sensitivity test that has changed lives miraculously. Some of the very
mhm,
early stories I have of where I think I got lucky and and that's good and it changed people's lives. But what I really did was create a system, creating that system of testing. I test every single client and I teach my students every single client must do a food sensitivity test.
mm,
And there's different ways to skin that cat, you can argue over which one's better. We think we have the best screening. It's not,
mm.
I just use a certain lab and anyone can do it. That's the other thing. Anyone can do these labs. And yeah, so you get just don't bother with the trial and error. Get the test done. If
Right.
yeah.
Probably saves a lot of time. Is there a food sensitivity that you see that is really prevalent in most people that
Yeah, the
they're,
five. I could give you my dirty five, which is
yeah,
soy, corn, soy. So I said soy, corn, dairy, gluten, and dairy, gluten, corn, soy, and eggs. So those are the
interesting.
top five that I've seen pop up. And I'll just tell you a story really quick. Um, Lady came in the office. She was coming in for pain, neck, back, chiropractic, and we did myofascial therapy and things, trying to help her feel better. And she was just really sad one day. I said, "Hey, first name, what's going on?" I'm always happy. And she wasn't having any of that. She just said, I'm so frustrated by this extra 40 pounds. And every time I went to go, well, we could, all happy face. No, um, she's 40 pounds overweight, extremely frustrated. And it's because she's on medication for the hives. And I've been on this medication for the hives for 2 years.
Wow.
And it's made me gain 40 pounds. She was otherwise, well, I mean, even, I just want to say, she cared about her looks very much. It was very distressing to her. And she says she had just been to the doctor for a checkup and told the doctor how frustrated the 40 pounds was. And according to her, He said, you can be fat or you can have the hives. Take your pick.
Oh, wow.
So listen, so she goes, well, doctor, that's very depressing. And he said, I'll be happy to write your prescription for antidepressants. And
Oh
so
my
that's
God.
why now I know, like it took her the few minutes would walk our patients back to their treatment room and we do the therapies and things. And when I finally said, well, first name, you know, maybe we could find out why you get the hives. And man, her head snapped around so hard. And sure enough, we ran a couple tests on her, environmental pollutants for toxicity, and we did a hormone test and this food sensitivity test. Got her off those five. She had like 8 or 10 that were bright red, showing up.
Right.
No, no.
Wow.
Within 9 days, she told me later, within 9 days, Reed, I called my doctor and I said, I'm not taking this medication anymore because I found out why I get the hives. What a concept. Well, maybe why you get the hives would be important. So I'm being a
Wow.
little bit uh, snotty here, but man, what a concept. So my whole life since then, and is devoted to finding out the
Yeah.
why. And with her, it was eggs. So one of those big five that I mentioned: eggs, corn, soy, dairy, and wheat. Eggs, soy, corn, dairy, wheat are the big five. And people with no money for testing could just get off those five.
Yeah.
Dairy and wheat, it's kind of a known thing in the health circles now. Just get
Hmm.
off dairy and wheat. I hear that. It may not help a lot. So I could tell you so many stories where that was the pattern. You get off the irritant. There's something in your environment. There's something
Yeah.
triggering, whether it's migraines or this hives. In her case, I've had miracle migraine cases. Kids with ADD, ADHD, because I was a football coach for 15 years, and I had so
Oh,
many kids, youth football, uh, who had asthma and ADD and turned out to be model students. No more asthma. Great. Now are great athletes. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful, rewarding type of thing. And
I
but
can
it
see
doesn't,
that.
it isn't always food. It's the problem. Well, oh, I'll just test my foods. No, it could be, these other things, the hormones, the immune system,
Yeah.
and so on.
What do you see as the biggest cause of chronic sleep conditions? Like, would you say that's hormones? Would you say that's stress? I mean, I shouldn't say stress because stress is, probably got other roots, but
Well, that's it. It's some form of stress. And sometimes it's lack of discipline, but often you can find other elements, stressors. People um, watch too much TV and the blue light and electromagnetic frequencies, and they don't have a good sleeping environment. You need a dark room. It's a little colder. Put some socks on if you need to, and quiet, and learn to breathe. And I bet you do this all the time, is teach people how to breathe and count sheep. I mean, it actually. I'm joking, but there's
yeah,
things like that are really simple techniques to at least fall asleep.
yeah,
So sleep could be, what is it? You can't fall asleep or you can't stay asleep. Wake up too early and can't get back to sleep. That's really common. Matter of fact, probably I get up way too early some days and I just
mhm,
can't get back to sleep. So I handle it my way. Blood sugar is another thing. The hormones, the immune system, because it's sometimes more active at night while you're trying to sleep. And so there's a
mm,
lot of things going on. There's always a lot of moving parts. That's why we have a system. You
yeah,
can't just, maybe it's this, maybe end up playing whack-a-mole with your supplements and with your therapies and with your diet and no whack-a-mole. It's got to be step by step and you'll sort it out. It's like sailing a ship. I don't know if you've ever sailed. I grew up on the Great Lakes, and there's no going in a straight line in a sailboat. You zigzag. You read the currents in the
right,
water, and the waves, and the wind, and you zigzag a little bit. You correct course as you go.
right.
You correct, you got it, but you got to have wind in the sails. You got to be moving forward. Then you can do something. And that's what we
Do,
do as practitioners.
do
Get the
most
ball,
people
get the
come to
ball
you?
rolling. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say, you're talking about this correcting as you kind of go along. And what's the biggest age? And I know it's probably all over the place, but what would you say where people's, because of the way they're eating, because of the way they're living their life, that these conditions start to either pop up or get to a place where they're in enough pain to come to somebody like you or to come and seek help. I mean, is that, I mean, I'm assuming
Good
probably not in
question.
their 20s and not in their 30s, maybe not even their 40s, but it's more the 50s, the 60s, where the conditions have gotten, like the body has had enough toxic overload or stress or hormonal imbalance that it's kind of at a crisis point, or it's starting to really show through, pop through the surface, like you said, like that iceberg.
Yes. Yeah. So our original, they call it a demographic, was working women who were, raised their kids already. Now they have a career. So they're out there in the world with their own money, so to speak. They didn't have to go check with anybody to engage in our services. We're fee for service, so you're pretty much paying out of pocket because your
Right.
regular doctor, you've already been through four of those and they didn't help you. And if they did help you, great. Not saying, but when you're that point, so that would be the demographic. Start with working women, and you work up till usually retirement, so 65. So your kids are gone to college maybe, so you're definitely in your 45s, 50s, and then for the next 15, 20 years, you got to try to be happy. Like that's the goal after all. Have some
Yeah.
joy. Without joy, what's life? It sucks. And so you got to be self-aware too. They have to realize something's wrong, that it's not normal. And we've been told that headaches are normal, migraines are normal, or
Mm.
hysterectomies when you're 42 are normal. That's baloney. They're not normal at that age. Matter of fact, never is it normal. It might be useful and maybe even required, but it never should be. So we've done a lot of teaching over the decades now that it's not normal. The normal disposition or state is supposed to be glad to get up in the morning, like joyful, like happy about something, have a purpose in your life, and get, we were given, I heard someone else say this, I didn't, but he just said, that we were given these time broken down into these units called days, and you just get one at a time.
Mm.
And if your joy can't be in the past, it's got to be now. And people also live for the future. Oh, well, when I retire or when I, whatever. Um, no, it's got to be today. So that to me is the biggest, best tool is your point of view. And it's easier said than done for some people. They just have lived their whole lives in that cup half empty mentality. That's pretty hard to deal with,
Mm.
and you start going outside yourself for all the help, and you go through 10 practitioners. Well, the only thing common in that story is you.
Mhm.
you know yeah, and so it's been fun. I haven't um looked back with any regrets since I started. Again, I went from environmental law,
Right.
saving the planet, to just people, and it's been a hell of a ride.
Wow, it sounds amazing. I think our listeners would love to get access to your D.R.E.S.S protocol guidebook, right? I think that's what you
Yes.
were
Yeah,
offering
that
us.
would be a good thing.
And
Well,
what would be another way if I think we're going to put your link in the show notes
yeah.
to your, So, is there any other, what are they going to find on your website? So they, will be curious to get there.
Probably, well, we're called Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. It's just the name I came up with a long time ago. It just sounded cool, and now I'm stuck with it. But FDN for short. So there's FDN practitioners everywhere. You could sort of Google FDN practitioner near me. We're in 50 countries. But other than that, my free gift would be at fdntraining.com/thinking thin. Think thin,
Yes, I
right?
think you have, Thin Thinking is the name of the
Thin
podcast,
thinking.
but yeah.
Yes. So fdntraining.com, thin thinking. And
Okay. I will put that in the show notes for sure. And then people can get in touch with you for that. It sounds amazing. Um,
yeah, and of course, um, just getting up in the morning and being a friend of ours who graduated from our program calls it vitamin G. You heard of vitamin G?
no.
Gratitude.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and the bigger the dose, the better. And sometimes it's hard to do. It's a discipline thing.
Yeah.
You
I
got to,
think the morning is a good time though to kind of set your gratitude for the day. It's the easiest to remember to do.
yeah, yeah. I have so many things we could keep talking about. I'm sure we'll have a very jolly conversation around it.
Well, this has been fascinating, and we'll have to have you back to talk about maybe we can go deeper on a specific subject. But
Okay,
I can't thank you enough for your time today, Reed. It was really great to
thank you.
have you on, and thanks for all the information and also just to learn about the different breadth of testing that's available out there too to get to the root of things that are going on. It's fantastic.
Wonderful. Happy to be back anytime, and I appreciate the opportunity to be helpful.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Reed, so much. And please check out the show notes for how to get in touch. And Reed has also given us a link to his free masterclass called Step by Step System to Overcome Unwanted Health Issues. The link is in the show notes. So check it out and definitely remember to subscribe to your favorite Thin Thinking podcast and share the love as well. Share this episode with your friends. And remember that the key and probably the only key to unlocking the door of the weight struggle is inside you. So keep listening and find it. I will be back next week. Looking forward to seeing you. Have a great one. Thanks for listening to the Thin Thinking podcast. Did that episode go by way too fast for you? If so, and you want to dive deeper into the mindset of long-term weight release, head on over to www.shiftweightmastery.com. That's www.shiftweightmastery.com, where you'll find numerous tools and resources to help you unlock your mind for permanent weight release, tips, strategies, and more. And be sure to check the show notes to learn more about my book, From Fat to Thin Thinking, Unlock Your Mind for Permanent Weight Loss, and to learn how to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode.